Good morning. Today we're going to be working on how we can use Swift to create an app that can both change screens like normal, as well as look at the use of color manipulation, and how we can also look at how we can use media inside a Swift app, including sound. So let's go ahead and take a look at our outline right here. As you can see on our storyboard, we have two screens on the app. We have our media page scene right here and our demo scene. Our demo scene first, it has a button, click me. This is the button we use to change colors. As you can see, it has a nice color background, so it's going to be very noticeable what the actual colors we're working with. We have our change screens button right here, which is linked to this lovely segue right here. If I click on the segue, you can show that it's linking right here to that change screens button by the highlight on it. That's going to bring us to this other screen. So we change colors and go from that. On our media page segue, we have an image section right here. We'll change images based on the button response for this, as well as play, pause, sound, so we can use it to play or pause the sound. And then we also are introducing the UI slider tool, so we can slide the tool back and forth to seek along the sound and have it go to a specific point within the actual song that we're playing. And so as you can see, it has an image loaded right here. And so that's the basic structure we have on that. You can see we have our data members listed right here for our thing. We have our image button, our sound button, and our sound slider, clearly denoted by the names as to what they're going along with. And they're all stuck inside a stack view because it makes it really easy to hold it together. And these are, of course, all well within the safe frame for the app. So easy to good. We'll go take a look at that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Project Navigator section. So in the Navigator section, as you can see, we have our Model View Controller approach we've been using for all of our projects so far this year, and we'll continue using them all the way through this. Look in the Resources folder first, just to get started. Our Resources folder is where we put all the things we don't have to use on a regular basis, but we do want to have for the app. We have our app.delegate.swift file. That's the one that basically we don't do anything with. It's pre-generated for us by default, and until we do more advanced screens, we don't have to worry about that, so no big deal. We also have our info.plist, which is the information for the actual app that, again, unless we're doing most major apps, nothing even look at worrying. Then we have our assets.xc assets. Now in our previous project, we haven't actually touched this. Let's go take a look at it though this time. As you can see right here, we have a list of values over here on the left inside the outline form. And if you click on each one, you can see it has the associated image. Now, if we're going to create a more proper app, I would have a 2x and a 3x version of each of these images. But because we're just doing a quick little demo, I just have an individual app for each of them. So the Raichu has a cute little baby Raichu picture. Porygon has a Porygon. Pikachu, a cute little Pikachu, of course. We also have our audio file, the Neurosong Promises, and you can see the album art that's attached to that for the MP3 file. Then we have a cute little Gengar, our Ghastly, and because I'm being really boring, my app icon is also blank as default. So no big deal. So our assets files where we load all those files. And again, to put something into our assets, it's really, really hard. All I have to do is go to my Finder window, go to whatever folder that I have, I pick, say for example, a picture on that. I have my cute little Octocat right here, and I can just drag it straight in. And boom, my Octocat is also now inside my XC assets. Immediate response for that, so it automatically updates my assets.xc assets, which is really just a folder inside the project. So now I have an extra image in there, no big deal. Okay, save that and maximize this again. So we have right here our ColorTools Swift file. Our ColorTools Swift is just a quick little file we're using to do some color management. Now it's not really the best model, but for what we're working with for our practice projects, it works pretty well. We have a public-private set. So what that means is that the getter itself is public, but the set itself is private, so I can only change the value internal to the file. And I'm using the lazy modifier on this because I don't want to actually have any access to this. I need to initialize it immediately, but when I have it, I have available. And it's of course a var because it does change values, and it's called previous color. Weird. It's of type UI color, and I have the default initializer right there. I also have a public func called createRandomColor that returns a UI color, and I'm using the arc4random method, modulo by 256, which gives me a number between 0 and 255, and then dividing that value by 255.00, guaranteeing that I have a nice percentage on that, and convert that to a CG float for each of the red, blue, and green percentages. I also have my new color being created from those values, red percentage, green percentage, and blue percentage, as well as an alpha that automatically is 100%. For some bizarre reason, definitely want this to be full color. I then also assign my previous color to that color I just created and return that color as part of that parameter. So it's a really quick, easy model. Not a lot of work for it, but it's there so we can use and do some fun with that. We'll go ahead and close that as well. We then have inside our controller group, where we're going to be doing all of the work for the code, we have our DemoViewController.swift and our MediaPageViewController.swift. Again, going back to the storyboard, each storyboard item that we actually do code with needs to have an associated view controller with that. And the names on them should reflect exactly what they are and what they do. And since this is a demo, I'm with the amazing name of DemoViewController. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, and we'll use the assistant editor so we can see both the code and the associated GUI that goes along with that. So I'll select right here to show the item, click on the view controller icon right there, and then do Alt-Command-Enter to open the screen associated with it. And then I'll close my navigator pane because I'm done with that for right now with the Command 0. So we have right now our demo scene, and we can see that we have some references to this right here. And so I have my outline right here and my document outline. I have my actual GUI component and the associated with the automatic right here for the assistant editor. And if I go and hover over this lovely line right here for the color button, you can see it immediately highlights the associated button for it. Same thing for my screen button. So you can see they have immediate responses to that. I also have right here this IB Action Func color button click, which is of type void. Again, because I like to explicitly assign my return types to that, I don't let the default one happen. I explicitly call it a void on that to make sure it happens. And I hover over that, that's linked directly to this color. You'll notice that the other method right here, change colors, is called inside this, so I can have it happen externally to the method. That way I can also use it right here inside my view.load. So this way I don't have to rewrite these lines of code multiple times. I simply have a method, in this case private method, change colors, so I can call it as needed inside the actual view controller. And so I use that inside the view.load method, so it happens as needed for that. I have a private lazy var color tool, which is a reference to my ColorTools model object we just talked about. Again, because I'm using a view controller, I need to make sure that since I'm not creating my own custom init, because most of the time, 95% or so, we don't want to actually do that. So I have to make it lazy, because I don't want to initialize it until I actually have the access to it. And that's where I have it down here, inside this lovely color tool, I create random colors that I call in my view.load and my change colors, which at that point, I know my class is already available, so I can then know that my class is initialized, and it's okay to use that right there. Same thing with my lovely IB outlets, color button and screen button. These are UI button optionals. Again, we notice that it's an optional with the force unwrap exclamation point because we don't have access to that value at first. Before we actually inflate the screen and actually pump it full of memory, we don't have access to it, so we have to make sure it's available to us before we try and call it. And so that's why I don't do anything until after view.load has happened. And so once I'm in view.load, I have access to my outlets. In this case right here, it calls change colors, which means I can then go to and talk to my view, my color button, and my screen button. All of those, because it's already in the view, they have been inflated, and these buttons have been unwrapped. They are optionals that have a value attached to them. That's definitely something we want to make sure we look at. We'll do some more on optionals another time and take a look at that there. So let's go follow the segue from the change screens button. That segue that's linked to it right here. Again, if we click on it, we can see the segue automatically highlights that. So that segue goes over here to the media page. We'll pull that up right here, and we'll click on the media page section right here to automatically it pulls up the issue right here in the document outline. We'll click on the view as well, so we can see that right here. And as you can see, I have my document outline right here, and I have my image frame itself. I have my change image, and I have my play pause and my slider button. These are of course linked to the associated IB outlets right here in my UI components section. Again, I'm using the whack mark colon, which makes it so I can go over here inside my outline, and you can see a nice little section for UI components, my lifecycle methods, my UI methods, and any internal methods actually go along with that. And that's what that mark colon slash means. So it's a great little way of organizing our code inside that as well. So we have our outlets, hover over them, we can easily see what they refer to, making sure they're all correctly identified. And again, we know that they're working properly because the well right here is filled, and it also does that lovely link right here on the screen, so I can see over here that this item right here has that link that we just saw where it says image frame, and it takes the name of the variable, capitalizes it, and turns it in regular English. Great way to have that handled, excuse me. I also have some data components I have to worry about. I have a sound player variable, which is an AV audio player optional. Now notice that this optional is a question mark, it's a possibly unwrapped, and that's because this one doesn't have to be force unwrapped at times, so we can use it with the optional. And that requires me to have use the import AV foundation, aka the audio visual foundation components, so I can refer to sound file information. And my lazy var color again, because I'm going to do some more changing colors because it's fun, and it's the thing I do instead of hello world, so no big deal. I also have a var called image counter. I default that to 0 because, again, when we're using an image controller, I do not use a init because it requires to have two specific custom inits that I don't need to worry about most of the time. There's no reason to init with coder or have an override init for this, so I don't have to do that. So I'm just using my simple little variables and initializing them right here by default. And then I have my view.load, my lifecycle method, and that automatically calls super.view.load just like normal. It sets the view.background color to be a random color just by default, and my sound slider to also be a random color because now that that's initialized and I have access to that optional value, I can change my cute little circle to be something besides white. I then have to, as soon as the view is loaded, that's when I want to make sure I call loadAudioFile. I need to actually be able to, once I'm inside the app, I need to make sure I have my audio file loaded so it'll actually work. So let's go down and take a look at that really fast. And my loadAudioFile loads the actual file for that. In this case, I'm going to use the if-let sequence. If-let, again, allows me to, if a variable can be resolved from an optional return type, I can actually get something out of it. In this case, I'm going to use the Sound URL is the NS data asset name of Nero Promises, which is going to go to my lovely assets file, assets.plist, and see if there's a Nero Promises file that I can actually use inside that. If there is, if that file does exist, which it does because I put it there, then I'm going to go ahead and use this do block, which has a couple of try optionals where I'm going to force unwrap these components and actually grab that out of there. And so we're going to continue we're going to take a look at this load audio file in just a minute, but that load audio file has to happen when this screen loads. Otherwise, it won't have access to the actual audio, so we can work with that. So we'll take a look at that in just a minute. We then have a couple other methods we have right here. So we have our change picture method, which is, as you can see, is an IB action. It is linked to the change image button. Really weird. We have our sound play method, which is of course linked to the sound play button. As you can see, it highlights right there as well. And then I have my slide sound, which is linked to my sound slider. And we'll go ahead and take a look at those in just a minute. We'll get to the code window so we can see that a little bit better. So let's go ahead and switch to that right now. So we'll close the assistant editor, and we'll go ahead and go back, go to our navigator window, go to our DemoViewController page. Again, we already saw that. Not a lot of work to happen in there. But MediaPageViewController page, Swift, and we'll close this one out. So now we can take a better look at what's exactly happening inside here. So we have inside that, we have our change picture method, which calls switch image. So again, I'm using the idea of refactoring out the method of work so I can have this happen somewhere else if I want to. Right now it doesn't happen, but it could happen somewhere else as well. So I can have it so it could switch images every once in a while inside the song and have it so the images change as it plays. It can make it something kind of cute, so we can see how that works. So we have in that switch image right here, it's a void type method, it's a private method. I'm using again that mark internal method so it shows up right here in the outline. So I can go switch to it right here and it'll take me right to it immediately, just like that. So I'm checking a value based on this of image counter. If image counter is greater than 4, I'm going to reset the value to 0. If it's 0, I'll choose Gengar as an image. If it's 1, it becomes Ghastly. 2, Pikachu. 3, wait, that while wasn't there, but it won't crash because the magic and the work that happens behind the scenes, if I try and call an image that doesn't exist inside my XC assets, it's not going to cause a problem. It's simply just going to set that image frame to be nil, which means it doesn't show anything, which is amazing. Otherwise, I'm going to have that default image be the Porygon image, so it starts off with that by default. As you can see right here, my view background color becomes a random color. My sound slider also gets changed to a create random color, and my image counter goes up by 1, so I can switch through those images in a cycle. And so we have it right there as that switch image can be called in more than one spot. So right now that's only happening right here when I click on the switch image button, but I can make it happen additionally, and we'll see how to do that in just a minute. My sound play calls my playMusicFile, which if we go down and take a look at that, my playMusicFile that's associated with it, I first check to make sure that my sound player is available. So I have to use the optional unwrapping, aka the question mark. So I check to see if sound player is available. If it is, then I can grab that value, sound player, unwrap it, see if that AV player is available, and ask for it if it's playing. And that will then be assigned to is playing. Because I then have to check to see if that actually does return true, I have a second check inside there of if it is playing. And then I call my sound player unwrap. I know it's already been unwrapped right here, but I have to verify it does exist, do proper coding on that, and then call .pause. Otherwise, I'll call .play. Again, I have to use the optional unwrap because even though I've already retrieved the value from this, I still have to continue on and continue checking because it isn't optional, so I always have to ask with optionals if it's okay to keep using it. I have a less safe version, so if sound player optional .is playing and force unwrap. Oh, yeah, not nice. If I use this code, it will compile and run, but there's a greater chance of failure for a lack of memory issue or some other problems. We don't want to do this. We want to use the nice if-let structure because it's a better programming style, and it's actually saying, hey, I understand what's going to happen. We will see some examples of some bad code later on in this project, and we'll see what's going on with that. Okay, so you have that right there. Okay, and then we have our slide sound. Our sliding sound method uses the slider. Now, I am using the parameter on this one. I don't have to because I'm not actually referring to that because I'm not using that sender at all. But I go and I grab the seek time and I grab the sound slider's value. So again, sound slider is my lovely reference right up here, my unwrapped value. And so I already know it will be unwrapped at this point. And I grab that seek time. I then have to then again ask my sound player, I have to unwrap if it's available and set that current time to be the seek time from this. Now, where this all comes to play is because I have that load audio file where I can actually load that sound player with the correct song. So let's go take a longer look at that. So we have my load file method. This is that nullity helper method we're going to use to actually make something happen. It also has an associated helper method to go along with it as well. And so we have right here in our load audio file, it's a void method. And I use the if let again, which is going to use the optional unwrapping and let me proceed if it does give me a value. And I'm going to use the sound URL equals NSData asset name neuropromises. And again, the NSData asset goes and looks inside my XC assets file and sees if there's one called neuropromises. If there is, then I can proceed. And I grab that NSData asset, and here's where I'm going to use that force unwrap. This is the try exclamation point. The try exclamation point means if it doesn't work, it's going to completely crash. But because I know this is okay, because I put the file in there and I know exactly how it's spelled, we're A-okay. But if you have any possible chance of, say for example, retrieving from a network, accessing a file that may or may not exist inside another project, or trying to go for something on the file system, never ever do this. But because I put it inside my XC assets, we're okay. Otherwise, shouldn't do this. You'd have to use the standard approach of the if-lets to build that together. I'm then going to have a try sound player equals and then grab that optional value. And here's where I use the AV audio player. I pass it the data of that sound URL that I just created right here, .data. That's the data source that we're using. I have the file type hint saying this is an MP3 value. It's a raw value. I'm going to set the maximum value of that sound slider to go to the very edge of the sound. Oh, great. And then I'm going to use this new thing. This is timer.scheduleTimer. This is a fantastic method, but it does require us to use a little bit of Objective-C reference code, which we'll see here in just a second. And so timer.scheduleTimer is a static method that goes through and it grabs that schedule timer and creates a reference to it. And it says this time interval in this case is every 0.2 of a second, so 0.2. And then I have my target is going to be self. It's going to refer to this object right here. And then I'm going to use this selector. And selector is a way of talking to a method using the Objective-C precursor at objc. And that's a big thing that I can use for that. And that's going to use this self.update slider, so the method right there. And notice when I call self.update slider that there are no parens. Again, this is one of those weird holdovers that comes back from Objective-C and we talk back to it. But Swift has found a way to deal with it by using this hashtag selector and indicators with the Objective-C. So we can actually say, hey, here's how I handle some code that works like Objective-C does, but in a more Swifty way. The user info, don't need to worry about that. We'll set it to nil and repeats, yes, we definitely want this to repeat over and over again. Now, this does not guarantee a 0.2 seconds all the time. It's the every 0.2 seconds that's available. So it might be, 0.2, 0.21, 0.20001. So it's not, like obsessive time, but it's as close to 0.2 as we can get. If for some bizarre reason this do block crashes and burns, I'll catch the exception, just simply audio file error, because we shouldn't have to worry about that, but we're good to go. Now that private func update slider method right here returns void, says sound slider value equals a new float passing the sound player's unwrapped current time. And this is where I could have it also change the color after we test this out. But first, let's take a look at this. Let's have this run. So we're going to go ahead and stop and rerun this, just because it's always a good idea to rerun our app as we do it. My build succeeds. Let's take a look at it over here. And I have my click me button. Every time I click it, the color changes. Oh, so cute. It's great stuff. Now, I'm going to choose the change screens. It switches over to that other view controller. In this case, we're now in the MediaViewController. My change button image goes through, cycles through, but I reach that which doesn't exist. So it doesn't put anything or it just leaves it blank. Great, no crash, nothing bad, we're A-okay. Keep changing image, cute, wonderful, great. I hit play pause, and now you can hear the Nero song. And as you can see, every 0.2 seconds, this cute little cursor is sliding up along the bar. Fantastic stuff. Now, let's go ahead and see what happens as we make a small change to this. We're gonna make it so it will also change color every 0.2 seconds and grab a new color for that. Not a lot of work, but we can make that happen. We'll also have it so it changes the picture. So, really cool. So let's go take a look at that. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit pause, because I don't need to hear this happening again as we do it. We're gonna go back over here, go to our window, go to our app, and inside our MediaViewController, we have that cute little method we already refactored out with the switch image, which goes through and switch image changes the image based on the value that's going along with it, and also sets my background color and my slider color to a new random color. Yeah! Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. We'll add that lovely call to switch image. And we can, since it's an internal method, we can easily call it right here, right after we have the seek happen. So just call the method, switch image, parens. We have the call for that. We'll rerun the method, hit OK. Build succeeds, good to go. So we click me, no change right there, so it still works just like it did. I click on change screens, and now, That loop is happening over and over and over again because it's automatically happening. That loop is called, ooh, yikes, that's a problem. We have that update slider right here. When I set that scheduled time slider, we only want that to happen right here for the switch image. We only want it to happen if it's plain. And we already have a way to check for that right here, if that is plain. So if we want to make it so we can add that, we're going to go ahead and just grab that same test we have from up here. So if let is plain, we're going to ask if it's plain, and then again check to make sure it actually is plain. And again, we don't want to use the not quite so safe version. We have that little test right there, and then if it is plain, we're going to go ahead and ask again, verify that value if it does actually work. If it does, we'll call the switch image. So now every 0.2 seconds, it should actually change the image for us. Really cool. So let's take a look at that. So we rebuild it, build succeeds, run that app. Again, hit stop so it can rerun the app. We're going to go ahead and switch back over here, change the screens. Again, we just change image. No change right there, working just the way it should. And so, play pause. We have a lovely cycle of color, image, and sound. And as you can see, it's still cycling through. Now this is a little bit annoying, so we probably may not want to actually do this for the actual app that we might want to make. But we can see how we can tie actions happening for multiple things. And now when I stop it, the colors don't change. We can also have the seek button work. So I can play pause right here. And so we have some great little reaction with that. And so we can, as long as it's plain, the colors change. When it stops playing, the colors don't change. And we have a great, cool little app. And so again, let's go take a quick little look at how we did that. So go back over in our window, go back to Easy App, take a look at what we're doing. We have that color change happening again. Now if it's playing every time one update slider gets called as needed as part of this timer, which gets called every 0.2 seconds, I can change that. If I want to say this, for example, for every 2.2 seconds, that's now going to be every 2.2 seconds, a much longer interval. I'll go ahead and rerun that, and we'll actually see a very jerky approach to our movement, which looks a little bit different. So we definitely want to make sure our animation's not quite that jerky when we're doing things we want the user to see. So we take a look at that. Much slower for animation, but probably better for our actual our visual. So we could have a separate timer just for the colors if we want to have an animation on the sequence right there for that, versus the sound of the visual, making sure for our sound slider, having that animate every 0.2 seconds is a much better idea. And as you can see, my seeker lets me get to any point within the song, and it still continues playing because I haven't changed the play status of that. So we can do some cool stuff with that. So again, let's just do a final review before we're done. Turn off the sound button. So again, we have our MediaPageViewController inherits from UIViewController. Amazing. We have our view.load, which calls our loadAudioFile because we have to make sure we load that audio before we can hear it once our app loads. And then we have our user interaction methods that call helper methods, so again, so they can be called again as needed. Again, the idea of designing code so you can readjust it as needed instead of only having it right there in the user interface section. And again, sometimes if this is getting more advanced, we'd completely form that to a different class, but for right here for this example, it's a-okay. We have our switch image, which just uses a quick little if-else sequence, and then has the updates for that. We have our playMusicFile, which uses the proper approach of using an if-let, but also gives you a not quite safe approach, so you can see some of the ways of doing some quick and dirty code, but really not recommended. And then we have our loadAudioFile, the more helpful method, where we use the sound URL so we can actually retrieve something from that XC assets file. It retrieves it as a data. I then load that to the audio player, pass it as that variable. I can then set the sound sliders values for that, attach a timer to it to fire it at a regular value. And again, 0.2 seconds is great for that, but we probably don't want to have the visual happening, so we'll have to take that out. We then have our update slider method, the one that's called every time by that timer. Now I added this lovely thing for switching image, which got a little which we don't want to do. So we're going to go ahead and take that part right out. Just do a comment right there because we don't want to actually delete the code. And so again, on update slider, it grabs the value of where its current time, takes that value, and moves that slider's value, aka the thumb bar, to that specific spot. And that's all it has to do. And so that's what we've done within this project. So again, we've learned how we can actually load a file into XC assets, play that sound file, switch images, and use some cool things with that without causing an error. We're always using the standard way of making segues and doing all that cool stuff. Again, make sure you vote, and have a great day. We'll see you in the future. Shalom.